Hey, Larkin Rose here. I just recorded a daily rant and decided I should really do a YouTube video about this. Incidentally, if you want to subscribe to my daily rants, you can go to the link below and connect pal. But this was just too funny and too illustrative of the mentality of commies. I posted a little thing on Facebook. It basically just said, commies are people who believe that if you get something by way of voluntary trade, you're probably exploiting and being evil, whereas if you get something for free, that's a noble right. And so, predictably, a number of commies whined about it and complained about it, and that's fine. So, what often happens when I talk to commies is I use a particular line of questioning to try to get them to admit what they actually believe and how they see the world. And they always implode. Their brains always explode. Usually they don't make it past the first sentence. So I'm going to give an example here. So there's the first guy was named Ali. I don't know if that's his real name, as in ALI. And so he complains under my post and says, OP, original poster, has never engaged with a leftist in good faith. Everything he knows about the leftist is filtered through government and corporate propaganda. That's why he makes unintentionally hilarious posts such as this one. Which is stupid. So I said, false. I understand commie think all too well. Better than commies do, in fact, which is why they always go into dishonest tap dance mode after a few simple questions. And so I added, want to be yet another demonstration of this? I dare you to answer a few simple questions. And he says, okay, LMAO. So here's my first question, and this is a line of questioning I often use on commies. 1, if just you and I are in some area with plenty of unused and unclaimed resources, and I make something, let's use a bow and arrow as an example, does the fact that I made it using my time and effort mean it belongs to me, and that I have the exclusive right to decide what is done with it? Or if you decide you need a bow and arrow, does it rightfully belong to you because of your need for it? His answer is, what a stupid question. It would depend on the situation. Next. Already couldn't answer. And Teresa, somebody else chimed in and said, he literally gave you every single detail of the most specific scenario possible, LMAO. So you were the one refusing to engage. And then Ali complains again. It's a dumb question. Rights aren't agreements between two people, which I didn't say or imply. And he says there's no rightfully in a vacuum, which I didn't say or imply. I said, Ali, not surprisingly, you didn't make it past the first question before proving my point. You're already a cowardly waste of time, but thanks for proving my point. Now, about 2 seconds later, he says, anyways, if it was just the two of us and I could take your bow because I needed it, I'd take it, LMAO. I should have warned you ahead of time. If you don't like cursing, you might not want to watch this video because there's a fair amount. So I responded, wow, now that was funny. After one evasion, he shows that commies are selfish, violent, dishonest, immoral little pieces of shit. Bye. So that happens, complete, non-response, followed by admitting he would just steal it if he wants something. So then there's this other guy, Vance, who starts trash talking. He says, nice made up shit, bro. And I said, not at all made up. It's just more honest about commie bullshit than commies ever are. And I said, do you want to try to answer the questions yourself? And he goes into this irrelevant monologue for a while, and he's like trash talking, and I'm saying, well, do you want to actually answer the questions? He flounders around. Then this other guy, Jay, comes along and complains too. So these are basically 3 commies. And I got to the first question, and Jay is like, well, if there's some emergency, like a bear attacking me, I might take your bow. And I said, okay, what if there isn't? What if it's just, there's no weird, unusual, urgent situation. It's just, that's the situation. Do you have a right to take my bow? And he basically floundered around for a while and then said, I can't answer bow. So all this is going on, and then this Vance character is like trash talking and saying, I'll totally destroy you in a debate, blah, 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 on and on and on. So that's going along for a while. And then I go back to Vance because he finally looks like he's actually going to try to answer the questions. So, here we go, picking up. Remember, the scenario is me and him are in some place, there's plenty of resources. I made a bow. Is it mine because I made it, or is it his if he needs it? So again, this is a line of questioning I use on commies all the time. They never make it through without their heads exploding. So I say, if I made the bow and you kind of would like to use it to go fishing, does your need entitle you to it, or does the fact that I made it mean that I should get to decide whether you can? Vance responds, you should be able to voluntarily decide if you want to give me your bow. Cool, so far so good. That's private property, that's voluntarism. And so, I follow up. Now, if it's my bow and I have the right to decide what's done with it, the next question is, question number 2, would it be immoral and or exploitative for me to offer to let you borrow my bow for the day if you promise to give me half of whatever you catch with it? And he says, nope. He doesn't think that would be immoral. He says, exchanging personal property for goods is never immoral. It's called barter. Okay? So far, so good. Still in favor of private property, still in favor of voluntarism. And then I followed it up. So in this case, you believe in the private ownership by me of the means of production, the bow, and you believe there is nothing immoral about me making an offer where you do all the labor, but as the owner of the means of production, the bow, I get a cut of the profits. Now earlier he said, I'll totally gut you in this debate. So I wait for a while and then say, I eagerly await my gutting. So Vance responds, a bow is personal property. Not an answer, but okay. A whom you claim to own would be private property. Still not an answer. So I said, that's not an answer. That's a bullshit, meaningless term used to make shit up. Whatever you want to call it, do I have the right to make such an offer? Now keep in mind, he already said I did, but then I just rephrased it to point out you just accepted all of the basic concepts of capitalism. And he's going on and on. This is where the left anarchist makes a distinction. And I said, it's a meaningless, dishonest distinction. Answer the fucking question. Is it legitimate for me, as owner of the bow, to share in the profits of the endeavor where you are doing the labor? He's still going on. No, private property. The concept of, if he meant of, the concept of you drawing an imaginary line on something you didn't create is a meaningless bullshit, made up shit. Which had nothing to do with what I asked or described. And I said, don't worry, your bullshit distinction will be demolished shortly. Answer the question. Is it legitimate for me, as owner of the bow, to share in the profits of the endeavor where you are doing the labor? Now, remember, he already said it was, but then he's floundering around. So, he goes back to the right answer, which is nice, after some tap dancing. Yes, he says, as the owner of the bow that exists in physical reality, you can choose how you lend it to other humans. Cool, he's back there again. But where does it cross the threshold into coercion, he asks. So I give him question number 3. Notice so far he's giving the voluntarist pro-property answers. 3, now let's suppose that while I was building the bow, you were building a shelter. When night comes and I need shelter, does that entitle me to use the shelter you built? Or do you have the right to decide who can use it because you built it? His answer is, when I build an entire shelter with my own hands solely, I can do what I will with it so long as I occupy and use that home. As soon as I decide to leave it for good, I no longer have any control over it. So my next follow-up, he made it to question 4. Since it's your shelter, do you have the right to tell me, for example, I can sleep there at night if I bring you 3 fish from the river? Suddenly he says, nope, I did nothing to deserve those fish. I built that house for me, LOL, he says. So I follow up. So you have the right to keep me out and the right to let me in, but you don't have the right to offer to let me sleep there in exchange for something? He says, not ethically. What did you do to deserve the fish? Deserve the fish? Ethically, he continues, you would have to offer... Okay, pay attention. Keep in mind what we're talking about here. Simplest scenario imaginable. This next comment is where his brain starts to melt. Ethically, you would have to offer something he could have of his own that he could use. Help him build a house for whatever 3 fishes are worth. And I said, who the fuck is he? There's only you and me in this scenario. And before that, sometimes, when you're posting comments, they come out in the wrong order. Like you're typing something right while he's typing something. But just to make it crystal clear, before that I asked, I want to make sure I understand your answer because so far it makes you sound like a fucking lunatic. So it's okay if you keep me out. It's okay if you let me in. It's okay if I catch some fish and share them with you. But somehow it's not okay if I trade you some fish for being able to sleep there. And then he says, again, and then he made that weird comment, and I said, who's this he? And then he continues, you can do it, but at that point, you are exploiting him. And I said, who is him? You and me are the only ones there. And he says, him is whomever needs the house that is homeless. And I said, that's me. Did your brain just short circuit? You built the house, I caught some fish. And he said, yeah, you want to expand on this scenario? And somebody else chimes in and says, I salute your level of patience, Larkin. And I said, I want you to reinstall your brain so your answers have some vague connection to the actual questions. You built the shelter. You agreed that that means you get to decide who can use it. Is it legitimate and moral for you to tell me that if I give you 3 fish, I can stay there? Now, he knows the only sane, logical answer is, of course that's okay. But he also has the commie bullshit thing that says rent is oppression and theft. So he has to do this bizarre freaking tap dance. So here is his response. Instead of answering the most painfully simple question imaginable, he does what commies always do and goes into an irrelevant monologue. So here we go. I'm going to read how he typed it. You can try to figure out what he was trying to say. You want how the socialist would arrive at the efficient conclusion of this terribly inefficient and potentially corrupt system that seems to be developing if we introduced more parties to this mind exercise? Really? You can't handle the concept of I'll trade you some fish for staying in your shelter? That's too much. I get where you are coming from, he says, but let's say another guy came to this island with some seeds. In other words, let's complicate the hell out of a very simple scenario because he can't answer it without looking like a lunatic. And I said, Vance, try to focus. This is literally simple enough for the average 5-year-old to answer without hesitation, but it seems to have made your brain implode. So, and he's still going on in his monologue, changing the scenario and monologuing about it. He opts to have a desire to the farm. The smart socialist has an aha moment. The socialist, me, just built a house, right? I am hungry. You have fishes and can hunt for them. And he has seeds and wants to farm. I said, quit the irrelevant bullshit and answer the fucking question. Once again, you built the shelter. You agreed that that means you get to decide who can use it. Is it legitimate and moral for you to tell me that if I give you 3 fish, I can stay there? He's still battling on. The socialist says, how about I build both of you homes, maintain them, make sure you don't have any structural problems, cut your lawn, etc. Larkin, you fish for both of us, and this new farmer guy farms for both me and you. Viola, he meant voila. Voila, everyone has a house, fish and vegetables, the end. Notice how quickly he wants to be, here's my view of how everything will be, shut up, stop asking me painfully simple questions about what I believe, because my position is bullshit. So again, I say answer the question, don't give a stupid irrelevant monologue, answer the fucking question. He said, I already did. This other guy chimes in and says, he doesn't seem able. I said, you are doing a splendid job of showing how commies' brains completely explode when the literal reality of their shitty philosophy is exposed by using the most basic hypotheticals imaginable. And then he quotes me saying, I want to understand your answer because it makes no sense. And I ask the question again, and he says, you can offer to trade your fish to sleep in my home, but ethically I would be exploiting you as I am leveraging something that belongs to me without allowing you to be self-sufficient. Look what happens to commies' brains when you make it very simple and clear. Utter gobbledygook crap comes flying out. Ethically, I would be exploiting you. How is he exploiting me when we're just trading things? I'll give you 3 fish for being able to stay in your shelter. suddenly I'm exploited. Remember, he said it's okay about the bow and arrow. Like about, I made a bow, he borrows it to get some fish. He said, that's perfectly okay, that's just trading stuff. Now suddenly, because it's a shelter instead of a bow and arrow, he's making up this crap because he's desperately trying to cling to the idiotic notion that rent equals theft. It's profoundly stupid. But so I'm leveraging something that belongs to me. That's what every barter is. You're leveraging the fact that you have something and somebody else has something that you want. And you say, well, you can have some of what I have if I can have somebody. Leveraging and exploitation. This is why communism is so freaking stupid, because it tries to pretend that voluntary interaction between human beings is somehow oppressive and evil. Sometimes determined by some completely arbitrary standard that changes every 5 seconds. But then he says, the thing about something that belongs to me without allowing you to be self-sufficient. Where did that come from? I didn't say he's not letting me build my own shelter. I just said you have a shelter. There's nothing about him not letting me be self-sufficient. It's so stupid. So I said, holy shit, are you having a brain hemorrhage? He said, are you? So I tried one more, said, let's give this one more try. You think you have the right to let me in. You think you have the right to keep me out. He already agreed to that. You think I have the right to share with you fish that I caught. But you think it's somehow immoral if I trade you some fish for you letting me sleep in your shelter. And he says, yes, that is exploiting you for something that is meant for me solely. Now keep in mind, he said he could let me in. So the whole it was made for me solely, that's out the window because he admitted he could just let me use it. And he has that right. And exploiting you, it's offering a deal. And most of all, he acknowledges he has the right to just not let me in. And this is one of the biggest glaring contradictions in commie bullshit. Why is it not oppressing me to just say, you can't come in, but it is oppressing me to say, you can come in if you give me some fish? It's so stupid. They genuinely believe that offering somebody a deal is more oppressive than just having nothing to do with them and giving them nothing. That's how stupid this is. And you can see it in his answers. And it's very helpful that he made it this far still trying to answer. So I said, oddly, I still don't feel gutted. However, I do feel a little bit bad about giving you a brain aneurysm by asking you questions that are so simple that any 5-year-old would have no problem answering them. Well, I suppose that's a fine place to stop for tonight. Holy shit. Really, seek help. Your devotion to that shitty philosophy has literally reduced you to a babbling moron. Good night. And then he says, you were gutted, my friend, says Vance. The socialist would build a house for his friend and the fisherman would fish for his other friend so nobody would have gotten exploited. Sorry you don't have the CPU to see how that would be non-exploitative. And I said, that's too sad to even laugh at. Good night. Look at the tap dances and the mental gymnastics commies have to do with literally the simplest scenario there can be. 2 people and 1 thing. How do we resolve 2 people want 1 thing? The voluntarist, capitalist, free market, pro-private property way is that I own what I own, you own what you own, we have the right to trade, neither of us has the right to take the other guy's stuff. And he started by giving those answers. And by the way, no commie has ever made it through that many questions without his brain exploding, because you can't without demonstrating that communism is immoral and insane and just idiotic, because there is no way to answer those questions that actually matches the commie notion of to each according to his need. Because that's the basis of it. That's what friggin' Marx said was the basis of it. From each according to his ability, you do the work you can, you produce what you can, and to each according to his need. Doesn't matter who produced it, matters who needs it. And then they make up these bogus distinctions like private property and personal property and try to make some vague definition that actually makes there be any difference, and there isn't. But this simple line of questioning, which I've used over and over again, the only time any self-described socialist ever made it through, it was by answering in the voluntarist pro-private property answers. They said, why are you pretending to be a socialist when you just absolutely answered like an anarcho-capitalist the entire way through? And he was just sort of like, well, I think we should share and stuff. And I said, that's fine. Sharing isn't incompatible with private property. In fact, private property is required to share. You can't share something that isn't yours. You have to own it first before you can charitably give it to somebody else. Other than that, no commie has ever made it through these questions about something that simple. Instead, they want this like worldwide, confusing, vague pile of BS to say, here's how everything in the world will be divided up among all the people in the world, and it'll work great. It'll be a utopia. And when I ask, well, how about two people with one thing? Their brains explode. I can't answer that. That's too complicated. Just wait. And they totally freak out because the philosophy is just stupid. It is based entirely on envy. And to sum it up, I'll mention another post I did on Facebook, which is so true and so triggers the commies. When they try to make the distinction between personal property and private property means stuff that commies want to steal from other people. Personal properties means stuff that commies don't want other people stealing from them. It's as simple as that. Communism is just an attempt to rationalize greed and theft and envy, and it's nothing else. It has nothing to do with sharing, has nothing to do with compassion. It has to do with trying to make up an excuse to rob people that you are envious of. And that's all.